There was a time in human history when human beings did not pray, but they still bowed. They did not cry out to the heavens, but they shed tears in front of carved stone. They did not seek Allah, but they worshiped things shaped by their own hands. And that very moment, the first moment a human being knelt before something other than the Creator, was the day that darkness stepped into human history forever. That was not an ordinary event. It was the very first crack between humanity and the heavenly realm. Before the world became familiar with war, before sin turned into a lifestyle, before morality was sold like a commodity, there existed a society that seemed harmless on the surface, but was rotten from the inside. They did not kill each other. They did not raid and plunder. They did not commit massacres. But they committed a crime greater than all of that. They replaced Allah with things they built for themselves. When a statue was first raised to remember a righteous person, and then the next generation started asking it for help, and the generation after that began calling it a god, admiration slowly turned into worship. And from that misplaced worship, humanity walked into an invisible era of collapse. In exactly that period, a man was placed in the middle of the world. No aura, no army, no throne, no magic, only a heart that carried a command from the heavens and a voice that rose up in the long silence of the human conscience. That man was Nuh, known in English as Noah. Nuh did not come to conquer, he came to awaken. He did not come to judge, he came to warn. He did not carry a sword, he carried a call. And that call was frighteningly simple. Worship Allah. You have no God besides Him. A short sentence, but it was the line between light and the abyss. It was the first declaration sent to all of humanity, a reminder that opened a confrontation unlike anything before it. Truth versus habit, faith versus corrupted tradition, light versus a darkness that had seeped into everyday life. And from this point on, history witnessed something that had never happened before. For the first time, Allah sent a Rasul to humankind. Not only a Nabi, but a Rasul, a messenger entrusted with rebuilding the very foundation of human faith. And Nuh was not chosen because of power, but because of a heart that would not bow to anything but Allah. He stood up in a world that no longer wanted to hear the truth. He raised his voice in a society that had become comfortable with falsehood. He opened the eyes of humanity when they had lived in darkness for so long that they were afraid of the light. And then the lonely journey began. Nuh started to speak, quietly, patiently, steadily, like drops of rain falling on a dead desert. Day after day, year after year. But people did not clap. They did not listen. They did not turn back. They smiled with cold indifference, turned their backs, covered their ears, and looked down on the man who was calling them away from the edge of the abyss. But Nuh stayed, one man against the entire world. He did not follow trends. No one protected him. No power backed him. There was only one immense block of solitude standing in the middle of the crowd, and a faith so great that it did not allow him to quit. He did not come to build an empire. He came to rescue souls. But people were afraid of being rescued. They wanted to hold on to their idols more than they wanted to seek Allah. They wanted to hold on to their habits more than they wanted to admit they were wrong. And deeper than all of that, they simply did not want to change. And when people do not want to change, they begin to hate anyone who reminds them that they must. And that is when you understand. The mission of Nuh was not about winning. It was about steadfastness. It was not about being loved. It was about being right. It was not about being followed. It was about never abandoning the command of Allah. Before humanity knew the names Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad, there was already one man who stood alone in front of the entire world and spoke words that everyone hated to hear. And if you are wondering, what happened next? Why did he not give up? How could one man endure the cold rejection of almost all of humanity for nearly 1,000 years without breaking? What was waiting for him at the end of the road when the whole world turned away? Then you are about to enter a story that is not meant just to be heard, but to confront your own soul. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, where history does not lie still on the pages of a book, but echoes inside the heart. If you do not want to miss the stories that have shaped the world and human destiny, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you can walk this path with us. Because what you are about to hear is not only about the past, it may shape your future. Nu did not begin his path with a grand speech, nor with an earth-shattering announcement. He began with small, simple words, repeated over and over like a heartbeat, reminding people to return to Allah, reminding them to let go of the things they were clinging to blindly, and reminding them that behind all wealth, all disasters, and all matters of life and death, only the Creator is the true place of refuge. But that very simplicity made him a stranger among his own people. Because human beings rarely accept truth when it demands that they change themselves. Day after day, year after year, Nu came to his people in every situation. He met them when they were gathered together in crowds, and he knocked on their doors when the night was deep. He spoke to those with status, and he humbled himself before those whom society despised. There was no fixed schedule, no marketing plan, no persuasion strategy. Only a persistent heart and a call that never grew tired. There were days when he repeated the same sentence so many times that even the wind could have memorized it. There were nights when he prayed in tears because no one wanted to listen anymore. But the doors did not open. The more he called, the more the hearts of the people locked themselves. The more he advised, the harder their hearts became. Some people turned away as soon as they saw him from a distance. Some covered their ears right in front of him. Some pulled their cloaks over their heads as if his words were something filthy that they had to avoid. And some burst out laughing, calling him a delusional man in a perfectly normal society. They did not need anyone reminding them about Allah, because they had grown used to living as if they did not need him. They did not need a prophet because they had built their own gods. And then time stretched, not only into years, but into centuries. Those who mocked him when they were young died off. The children who used to play in front of him grew up and continued the mockery, one generation after another. The cycle of rejection did not stop. And in that long, harsh stretch of time, the loneliness of a Nabi became heavier than any sentence a human court could give. 900 years passed, then 950 years. But the number of people who truly believed did not grow with time. Instead, it remained painfully small. Just a few dozen, and some narrations say not even 100. Even more heartbreaking, those who followed him were not the influential people of society, not the wealthy, not the leaders. They were the weakest ones, the poor, the unknown, the people with no power. That became one of the main reasons why the elite mocked him. They said, "If you are really the messenger of Allah, then why do the rich and educated not follow you? Why is it only the lowly ones who stand behind you?" They used that as proof to dismiss his message. In their eyes, truth had to travel with fame. Allah, if he truly existed, had to stand with people of influence. A Nabi standing among those whom society looked down upon could never represent the truth. But Nu never answered with anger. He simply reminded them that Allah does not look at bodies or status. Allah looks at what is hidden in the chest. He reminded them that there are hearts that may be torn apart in this world, but they shine brighter than anyone else before Allah. Those hearts can rescue others while worldly power cannot even rescue itself. Then the calamity came. The land stopped producing. Rain stopped falling. Livestock began to die off. Trees shriveled and dried. The people started to worry not for their souls, but for their bowls of food. And even in that moment, Nuh did not feel triumphant. He did not accuse them. He did not condemn them. He opened a path of hope. He told them to return, to seek forgiveness, to turn back before everything turned its back on them. He promised that if they repented, the earth would come alive again. The rain would return, wealth would increase, and children would be granted in abundance. He did not only speak about hellfire, he spoke about mercy. He did not only warn of punishment, he reminded them of compassion. But the reaction of the people was bitter. Instead of listening, they blamed him. They looked at him and said, "Everything we are suffering is because of you. The rain has stopped because of you. The earth has died because of you. The calamities are because of you." And just like that, the man who carried a message of salvation became the scapegoat for a society's anxiety. When people are afraid of facing their own mistakes, they always look for someone else to carry their guilt. And Nuh continued to stand there without fighting back, without giving up, without running away. He understood something that very few people understand. The call to Allah is not a campaign with an expiration date. It is a mission, and it does not end with success or failure by human standards. It ends with loyalty to Allah. He had knelt alone in the night praying while the world slept. And when morning came, he stood up again to call hearts that were awake but not truly aware. That was 950 years without applause. 950 years without results. 950 years running in one direction, following a command, while the world ran in the opposite direction. And in that long silence, people could finally see the real worth of a prophet. It did not lie in how many followers he had. It lay in the fact that he never stopped calling. It did not lie in how many listened. It lay in the fact that he never chose silence. Nuh did not live to see victory the way people usually imagine it, but the way he lived was a victory in itself. When human beings grow used to a social order built on power and self-interest, any call that shakes that order is instantly seen as a threat. And Nuh, even though he did not carry a sword or lead an army, became the most dangerous man in the eyes of the powerful. Because he did not attack their bodies. He touched the thing they were most afraid of losing, the spiritual control they held over the masses. Over time, the opposition to Nuh exposed a deep divide. On one side were those who had nothing to lose, and on the other side were those who refused to lose anything at all. Poor hearts were usually more open to truth, while wealthy souls were often filled with fear of the truth. Those at the bottom of society saw Nuh as a lifeline, while those at the top saw him as someone who was shaking their invisible throne. Because of that, the most powerful people did not only reject him, they targeted his message with deliberate contempt. They declared that truth had to come with prestige. If the elite did not approve a person, that person did not deserve to carry the truth. They invented a twisted definition. The poor had no right to bear witness to Allah. The weak had no right to speak of paradise. And someone who had no worldly power could never be the carrier of a message from the Most High. From there, they planted a deadly illusion in the minds of the people. If Allah really loves someone, He will make that person wealthy, famous, and powerful. And because of that lie, Nuh, a man who held no worldly power in his hands, became a living proof for the false narrative they had built. They did not refute him with reasoning. They refuted him with status. That was a weapon far more effective than any argument, because it attacked the deep obsession with power that had already taken root in their society. In that same period, nature itself began to change. The fields that were once lush and green turned into cracked, barren ground. Herds that were once abundant became thin and scattered. The rainy season no longer arrived. Harvests failed completely. For the first time, people felt the fragility of their own livelihood, and they panicked. But instead of looking up to the sky, they looked around for someone to blame. And every eye turned toward Nuh. He was the only one speaking about Allah. He was the only one warning about consequences. He was the only one standing outside the shared belief system. So they made their conclusion. Nuh was the disaster. The drought was no longer a natural phenomenon. It became evidence used to accuse a man who dared to speak the truth. When crops did not grow, they said it was because of his curse. When rain did not fall, they said he made Allah angry. When livestock died in the fields, they cursed him over the dry earth. That is how crowds behave when they refuse to admit their own guilt. They will always manufacture someone else to carry it. But right in the middle of that storm of anger, Nuh did not become someone who cursed them in return. He did not shout. He did not challenge them out of pride. He did not answer with hatred. Instead, he opened a door in front of them that they did not want to walk through. He called them back, not with fear but with hope. Nuh spoke of forgiveness when people were obsessed with punishment. Nuh spoke of mercy when people were hungry for blame. He reminded them that Allah does not close his door to those who repent, and that this drought did not have to be the final chapter. He promised that if they turned back, the rain would return, the land would revive, their children would grow, and blessings would pour down upon them. This was not some vague promise. It was a sacred guarantee. Allah does not abandon anyone who sincerely returns to him. But at that moment, his words tasted bitter in their ears. Because repentance means admitting that you are wrong, and power is not used to admitting guilt. So instead of bowing down, they straightened their backs. Instead of seeking forgiveness, they threw blame. Instead of returning, they drove him out. Slowly, threats turned into actions. Contempt turned into pressure, and criticism slid into the harshest language of all: violence. They threatened to stone him if he did not remain silent. Standing in front of those threats, Nuh did not step back. Not because he did not feel fear, but because he had nowhere to step back to. Behind him, there was not a crowd of supporters. Behind him, there was only the truth, and the truth has no escape route. Nuh did not stand as a man daring society to attack him. He stood like a mirror reflecting the true face of that society. People do not hate mirrors because they lie. They hate mirrors because they tell the truth. In that drought, the land was not the only thing that dried up. The society became barren not only because it lacked water, but because it lacked humility. The greatest conflict was not between people and nature. It was between people and their own conscience. And Nuh still stood there, alone. In the middle of the storm of anger, he still whispered about forgiveness. In the middle of curses, he still spoke of mercy. In the middle of danger, he still called on Allah. And that gentleness became unbearable in a world that had become numb to truth. Because sometimes nothing makes people more furious than being reminded that they can still turn back. There comes a time when even the greatest patience reaches its limit. Not because Nuh grew tired, but because the doors of human hearts had been shut by their own hands so tightly that there was no space left for light to enter. And in that moment, something happened that had never taken place before in history. Allah revealed to Nuh that no one else would believe. For the first time in a life that had stretched across nearly a millennium, this Nabi understood that his call had reached its final station. Not a success in human terms, but a fulfillment of a heavenly standard. And for the first time, Nuh no longer begged for their forgiveness. He knelt down, but he did not cry for his people. He cried for humanity. He called upon the heavens, but he did not ask for more time. He asked for justice. He asked that those who had turned light into a joke would no longer have the chance to lead others astray. He asked that cruelty would no longer reproduce itself. He asked that the foundation of falsehood would no longer be stretched out across generations. That prayer was not born from rage. It was born from pain. Then the command came down, quiet and decisive. Begin building a ship, not on the shore, not next to a river, on the dry, barren side of a mountain. A ship where there was not even a drop of water in sight. A project that made no sense to the world but made perfect sense in the scale of divine destiny. Nu began the work. Day after day, year after year, the planks of wood he had to plant and wait to grow. The curves he had to learn to bend. There was no blueprint in his hands, only guidance from the heavens. He worked with the patience of a craftsman while his heart carried the knowledge that the lives of countless creatures were being shaped with every strike of his tools. People passed by and laughed. They laughed at a ship in the middle of dry land. They laughed because in their eyes this was the height of delusion. They laughed because they did not realize that they were the ones sleepwalking toward the edge of a cliff. Every burst of laughter was like a cut. But Nu did not lift his head. He did not look at them. He did not answer. He fastened every plank with the calm of a man who was carrying out a command far greater than his own pride. Then the sign arrived. Not a lightning bolt tearing open the sky. Not a violent earthquake. Something no one expected. Water gushed from the ground. A dry oven split open without any visible reason. And when the first jet of water shot up from the earth, Nu knew time was up. He called those who believed. He led them onto the ship. Then a scene unfolded that no one could have imagined. Pairs of animals, male and female, walked toward the ship as if guided by an invisible sacred call. There was no chaos, no stampede, no panic. They walked onto the ship like beings that knew this was the place of survival. And then the sky opened. It did not rain the way people had seen before. It did not fall in drops. It poured. It fell like it was being emptied, like oceans dropping from above. The earth could not bear it either. Water burst out from the depths, shattering the foundations of every structure that human beings had once been proud of. In that great flood, the ship was not lifted by water alone. It was lifted by mercy. And in the middle of a boiling ocean, Nu saw his son. His own flesh and blood, but not a believer. He called out. Not with the voice of a Nabi, but with the voice of a father. He did not argue, he did not preach, he pleaded. But his son trusted the mountain more than he trusted Allah. In a moment, the waves rose like a wall between life and death. Nu watched his son swallowed, not by water, but by his own stubbornness. Nu lifted his gaze and called upon Allah, not to complain, but to ask. And the answer cut the last remaining thread between blood ties and faith. Family ties do not save anyone whose heart does not have Allah in it. While the world was being washed clean of illusions, the ship drifted like an island in the middle of a hellish sea. The waves lifted it but did not overturn it. The wind pounded its sides but did not shatter it. 6 months passed on a blind ocean. 6 months between the ending of one civilization and the beginning of another. Nu released birds. Day after day they returned with nothing. Until one day a bird came back with a green branch in its beak. A sign that land was alive again. A sign that a new world was waiting. A sign that hope was sprouting from the ruins. Then the ship touched land. There was no thunder, no explosive sound. It settled quietly as if the heavens were whispering to humanity. Begin again. The water receded. The earth emerged. The ship lay still on the mountainside like a scar on the face of history that would never fully heal. Not to remind people of a disaster, but to remind them of something more terrifying than a flood. A world that no longer knows how to turn back. And Nu stepped down, not with joy, but with the weight of a man who had lived long enough to witness the collapse of an entire humanity. Yet in that ruin, a seed was planted, and the world was preparing to enter a new era, built from the fragments of shattered arrogance. When the door of the ship opened, the new world did not greet them with birdsong or the familiar scent of damp soil. It welcomed them with complete silence. No roofs, no chimneys, no footsteps, only the wind moving through bare mountainsides and sunlight shining upon a land that had just been washed clean of every old memory. The world had just been born, but it did not feel young. It carried the sadness of an extinction. Nu took his first steps on this new ground with the feet of a man who had lived long enough to see an entire civilization turn into foam on the waves. He did not shout with joy. He did not celebrate. Every rock he stepped on was a period at the end of the lives of people he had once called with all his heart. Behind him was the life that had been saved. In front of him was an empty planet. At that moment, Allah blessed them. Descend with peace from me and with blessings upon you. It was not a loud announcement of reward, but a quiet reassurance. This devastated place would live again through hearts that still beat for Allah. From that small group of people stepping down that day, the world slowly learned how to breathe again. They pitched tents, cultivated the land, and raised animals. Every new sprout that broke through the soil was an answer to the flood that had receded. Every newborn child was proof that Allah had never abandoned humanity, even when humanity had once abandoned him. But the strangest thing was not the revival of the land. It was the silent transfer of humanity itself. The other branches of mankind no longer existed. Only one line continued. Every bloodline, every language, every tone of skin now traced back to a single point: the family of Nuh. From that moment, he was no longer only the prophet who survived the flood. He became a cradle for humanity once again. Later generations called him the second Adam, not because he created a new species, but because he became the starting point for a story rewritten in blood, tears, and steadfastness. From the children of Nu, humanity spread across the earth again. Not through military campaigns, but through births and footsteps. His descendants moved east and west, north and south, carrying with them faint memories of their ancestors and one essential legacy: that human beings had once been erased from the map of the world because they forgot who their Lord was. And there was something even more painful than the memory of the flood: the memory of a father. Nu lived many more years, but not a single day passed without him remembering the face of his son amidst the waves. He lived long enough to see the world reborn, but he also had to live with an empty space that would never be filled. A wound that did not bleed on the outside but would never fully heal. That is a harsh lesson for humanity. Sometimes the person who is right is not the one who gets to live a happy life. Sometimes the one who stands with Allah still has to bury their heart in loss. Faith is not a ticket out of pain. It is the strength to keep living with pain. As the years went by, the world grew crowded again. Children laughed in places that had once been the depths of the sea. Grain grew in soil that had once swallowed people. The sky seemed clearer, the earth seemed gentler, and once again human beings slowly began to forget, until the old stories survived only as faint tales. But one thing never faded. The Great Flood was not only a punishment, it was a cleansing. It did not come to erase life, but to remind humanity that life can only continue when the memory of Allah remains. The story of Nuh does not end on the mountain where the ship rests. It lives in every era when human beings stand at a crossroads. It returns every time we are forced to choose between faith and comfort, between truth and safety, between light and darkness. Because every generation has its own great flood, not of water but of temptation, not of waves but of forgetfulness. And each person at some moment in life stands in front of an invisible ship of their own, not built of wood but made of decisions. There is no storm cloud as a sign, only the tremor of conscience. Will you get on the ship? A glorious career will not save you. A high mountain of status will not protect you. A beautiful past will not shield you. There is only one question that matters. Do you belong to Allah or not? That is the greatest legacy of a man who stood for nearly 1,000 years in front of the world and never turned his back on the heavens. Nuh did not leave behind a palace. He did not leave a monument. He did not leave any treasure. He left humanity a question, and each of us must answer it with our entire life. The lesson here is not simply be patient. The lesson is be steadfast even when no one is clapping for you. Stay loyal to the truth even when it leaves you alone, and continue to believe in Allah even when it feels like the whole world is walking away. Nuh did not live to see the crowds come back, but he lived to do what was right. In a society that worships quick success, his story reminds us that the greatest value is not in what we gain, but in what we refuse to lose. Iman. Applied to today, each of us has a ship to build, not from wood, but from choices. That ship is made of the small decisions we make every day. Choosing honesty instead of deceit, choosing humility instead of arrogance, choosing to return to Allah instead of ignoring our conscience. When hardship comes, do not give up in despair. When you are misunderstood, do not drown in resentment. When you feel alone, do not trade your faith for a temporary sense of safety. Remember, the mountaintop could not save the son of Nuh. Only the mercy of Allah can save those who truly belong to Him. If you want to keep diving deeper into the stories that shape the history of faith, join the Prophetic History Explained community to receive more beneficial knowledge about the prophets, the great turning points of sacred history, and the essential lessons they offer for modern life. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and give us more motivation to bring you even more valuable content in the next episodes. The journey of understanding history is the journey of understanding yourself, and we are truly honored to walk that path with you.